SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith in for Richard here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Happy Tuesday, everybody. You made it through the first day of the week. It is Tuesday, June 16th, here a little after 6 o'clock as we start mornings. If you want to be part of the conversation, send us a text, 601-879-4395. Greatest listening audience in radio, and always wonderful to read and get your feedback and have an interactive morning program. Lance, how are you this morning?
Man, I am wet.
That is the truth.
Goodness gracious, that was a gully washer coming in. If you're driving wherever at this hour or in the near future, be really careful.
Absolutely.
It was nasty out there.
I hadn't looked to see, but I assume that there either are or will soon be some flash flood warnings because I kept driving through some huge sort of accumulations of water here.
Yesterday was much the same out in Rankin County. I think in certain areas it just hit.
Yeah.
It just came down. I talked to a couple other people like, well, it didn't rain too much. I was like, well, yeah, it did here.
Well, it rained enough yesterday that I sort of assumed we would wake up to a dry sort of morning, but that was not the case at all. And in fact, I was telling you this off the air. I was getting ready to leave, and I heard just the sound of water, and it was so because I wasn't anticipating rain, I thought there was something wrong in the house. I was like, I got to go figure out what's running. And then I went, oh, you know what's running? The sky is running all over everywhere.
Well, be careful, too. If you're in the southwest corner of Mississippi, the weather's going to get pretty inclement looking here around 9 to 10 through about 1, even down on the coast. As this storm kind of comes through up the coast of Texas and runs through Louisiana, it looks like it's going to be a pretty rough one, a lot of red and yellow in there. And so it will be hitting the Vicksburg area, Jackson as well, kind of blowing through. The northern part of the state doesn't look to get as near as disastrous potentially weather. It looks like it'll be spotty rain and stuff through the day. However, the south half of the state needs to be extremely aware, especially as you're getting up, going to work, doing the things that you do. And anyone that's on vacation that's down in the beach areas, you may want to, put your umbrellas up for a moment because it looks like it's going to be a little nasty for a little bit, but that'll blow through and it should be out of the way by later this afternoon, though. So it's a pretty quick moving front. So kind of the point I'm making, it will come and go, and it will drop a lot of water and potentially have some pretty good winds along with it. So if you don't have to go anywhere for a few hours around midday, early afternoon, probably a good idea to just stay put.
Yeah, if you're at the beach, it's time to figure out where the board games are.
Get the sandwiches out and get ready for a chill time.
I had my 5-year-old got in bed with me last night at about 12:30. We've taken to on the days that I'm on the show, Lance, Beth and I will sleep in different rooms because she's not as enthusiastic as I am about getting up at 4 o'clock and reading the news and drinking coffee. So, but he came in.
Who can blame her? Huh?
I think she's smart. She seems to be much happier with that arrangement. But our youngest came and got in bed with us, and came and got in bed with me. And, 2 or 3 years ago, I would have thought, oh, my gosh, I'm going to be exhausted, because no matter how small they are, they somehow manage to take up much more room than a normal adult human would.
Right. And
sleeping sideways.
And they're dreaming about the World Cup all night and punting you and kicking you.
100%. And, you're sleeping effectively on about 2 feet of the bed, the two of you kind of crushed together. But when I was, a few years ago, it would have bothered me because I would have thought, I'm going to be exhausted because I'm not going to sleep very well. But you realize, it's such a cliche when you're a new parent that, you're going to blink and they're going to be grown. And I've kind of gotten to the point now where he's our youngest. He's already 5. who knows how much longer we've got for people to come hop in bed in the middle of the night. So I may be exhausted, but I'm in a very happy mood because I got to sleep with my little buddy last night, or at least sit there while he slept, and I got to think about the show. So
having youngsters is a absolute opportunity to mold these little things into the leaders of the future. And you want to show that love, too. You boot them out of the bed, they're going to be, Dad's mean. I remember when I was a kid, man, I thought that was the coolest thing, to put on my cleats and run in there and jump in the bed.
With the cleats on?
Yeah.
I bet your parents loved that.
Oh, man, they hated it. But, that was one of the coolest things. And then also, begging them on Saturday mornings, would you please get up, please? My sister and I would be begging. We want breakfast. We want breakfast, we want pancakes. We want all this stuff. And sure enough, they'd wake up and Mom and Dad would come in and she'd put us together at breakfast. Never a complaint. It was sometimes, hold on now, just hold on.
Right.
But absolutely, having parents that put in that little extra effort, let you lay around in the bed, snug, watch a little TV, cook you breakfast. I mean, I remember those days, buddy. You can't trade those in, So please enjoy as much as you can, because one day they're going to have kids and they're going to remember, man, my daddy used to let me come jump into bed with him on a rainy night.
That's right.
Oh, and it'll make so much sense then.
But anyhow, it was always wonderful, even if it's not the best for sleep.
Well, you're a lawyer; you can handle it, man.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
You know how to cram in and get it done and hit the deadlines, make it all look beautiful when it all comes together, right?
This was somebody on the C Spire text line says you better enjoy it while you can because it goes too fast, and you're absolutely right. You were absolutely right, and that's. I've gotten where if any of them say, will you carry me up to bed, I'm doing it until I physically cannot do it any longer. Because every time at this point may well be the last time. So
there's something I watched the other day, and I've seen this several times. I know there are studies that were done by Harvard many years ago about the perception of time as you age, how it quickens and speeds up, and how much faster it gets. But there was somebody that had gone into some detail, and I watch everything and research just about anything that's interesting to me. And it said that time had sped up by about 25 or 30%. That basically a 30-day month, you're experiencing 23 days.
Interesting. But when you get older,
22 and a half. No, like the time now.
Oh, time is literally moving faster.
Moving quicker. So the perception that a lot of us have that, hey, man, life is just so fast. Time is sped up. Maybe it has. The perception may be real, and there may be something to it that just in general we don't quite understand.
Yeah.
But, it feels like time just flies by now. I mean, we're on a Tuesday, and we'll snap our fingers and it'll be Sunday.
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right. We will be finished this week in no time.
We got to get back to it.
No, I think that's right. I also think some of it, I do think you perceive it differently, too, as you get older. Just because you're so much busier. I mean, you wake up when you're 15, like you're going to school. Maybe you got sports afterwards. You're kind of, playing around. Your weekends are pretty free. You're our age. You're waking up every morning. You got a job. You got stuff you got to do afterwards.
Responsibilities.
And yes, that's exactly
when you're young,
right.
Your responsibility level is like you got to pick up your room. That takes 10 minutes.
Right.
Your responsibility level when you get to be an adult is you got an 8, 9, 10-hour work day.
Right.
And then you got family, and then you got to do this other stuff called yard work and take care of your house and pay the bill. So the responsibilities really never leave.
That's right.
When you're a kid, those responsibilities are a little light.
But but you're right, when it's,
I think
when you got to go in.
Correlated,
Yes, but it feels like a huge thing when you got to go clean that room.
Oh, yeah, it takes forever. I remember, so bored as a kid. So bored, even when you had an Atari and we had TVs and everything and all the four-wheelers and stuff you could do. You're so bored. What are we going to do?
Nothing to do here.
There's
nothing to do here.
Hey, what would you do to have those days back again?
Oh, absolutely.
Man, I'd love to just be bored for oh, man, I don't have anything to do all summer. Wow, I'm bored.
That is so true. Well, it's so rare that happens now that if you ever do get one of those Saturdays where you don't have anything to do, that it's like, oh my gosh, what an extraordinary treat. What am I doing on Saturday?
Or there's a guilt level that you're like, what did I not do?
I don't get the guilt.
You don't get the guilt. You're smart.
The handful of time, Kevin in Monticello points out, we don't have time to get bored at our age. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right.
Yeah, it's not. There's too much to do. And,
well, now you almost have to force yourself to not be doing something.
I think that's a great point. Procrastination, I don't know what that means. You know, because there's always something to do. You almost got to make yourself procrastinate. So I'll do that a little later, just so you can maybe kick your feet up, enjoy a moment, enjoy a beer without having something you got to go do. But no, I'm with you. I love the moments where you really are just going, okay, I can relax for a minute.
But those are the ones you're right. You do have to really sort of force yourself to do it.
Turn the TV off, turn the sounds off, and all that, and you have 20 minutes of just peace and quiet.
Well, and the other thing that gets you are these phones.
Oh, man.
That's the thing, and I keep trying to be better about it, but you really have to separate yourself from it, or you're going to be sitting there looking at something else you could be doing, and not just taking a minute and sitting back.
Yeah, it'll let you know you're not looking at it.
Yeah,
a phone, it'll let you know.
They're good at it. They're great at making sure you come back to it. Y'all stick with us. This is Lucian Smith here with Lance on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
And I'm bringing you the morning sun. I've pushed the old man up forever. Still I feel I've just begun.
Good morning.
Things with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
Good morning, y'all. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Another good line here on the C Spire text line. Time is like a roll of toilet paper. The closer you get to the end, the faster it spins the roll. There we go.
And it turns a different color.
If you've got thoughts and want to be part of the conversation, send us a text at the C Spire text line 601-879-4395. There's another one here, and it's so true. Don't you just love watching all of these social media posts about people from foreign countries enjoying being in the U.S., whether it's the Freddie guy or the Scotland fans in Boston. I mean, they're really enjoying being in the United States.
Hey, who wouldn't, right? I
agree.
People are breaking in to get here, so you can see this. I mean, you knew it was coming too, with all the naysayers and how bad it's going to go, and everybody that was really kind of rooting for disaster. I would say probably about half the country, because it was Trump as president. It's kind of like the UFC thing. There's too many people rooting against us that are us. Well, and you got too many people coming in. They're going, what are y'all complaining about? This place is amazing.
Well, no, that's exactly right. I would love to know, how many of the people who are over here were bought into thinking bad things about the U.S. before they came, and how many of them were excited to come because they know the U.S. is great.
And one question I would have too is, where are you getting your information? I mean, is this coming from things like these soft monies, NGOs, the money's flowing into these countries to give you an opinion? I mean, where is it coming from?
Right.
I mean, because it would be hard for me to believe that everybody out there, all of the news media on the planet, points a finger at America and says, it's terrible. It's got to be coming from somewhere. It's emanating from something.
Oh, I agree. And I have absolutely no proof. This is purely my belief. I continue to think that enemies of the U.S. are funding those sorts of thoughts, whether it's the Chinese Communist Party or the Iranians or the Russians. People are trying to promote anti-Americanism. But it shows you, it's amazing. You see these folks on the left who've absolutely lost their mind about Donald Trump. And even if you disagree with every piece of his politics, he's still an elected official who is going to be out of office in 3 years. We know that. I mean, there's not a
they're
there's not a
worried that he's
question.
going to denote himself a king.
But exactly. But it's this. It's fantasy land. I mean, Donald Trump. We have term limits in the U.S. He's going to serve 2 terms as president. He's gone after the 28 elections. January 20th of 29. He and Melania, they're leaving the White House. Somebody else is coming in.
Melania.
But these folks on the left, they're talking about our authoritarian president and how I think Robert De Niro said he couldn't celebrate America where we had this I forget the word, essentially dictator in the White House, and it's make believe.
A guy that celebrated dictators basically by playing mafia bosses has a real problem with a guy getting stuff done.
It's just silly. But it's one of the reasons I think it's wonderful watching these people come over here, because it reminds me of a little bit where the country was in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, we could disagree, but we didn't stop loving the country. We didn't stop thinking how lucky we are to get to live in the United States of America just because we disagree with the people who happen to be in power in the country. And that's part of the reason to love the country, because we get to vote on them every few years. So if the wrong people get in, we get to vote them out. And it's just it's wonderful watching these people come over here and love America, and it defies all of these terrible stereotypes that the leftist media tends to promote about the country, and so it really is a joy to watch all of that.
And it's funny because you're seeing most of them are enjoying more of the big box mindset. It's the name brands.
Oh yeah,
the Taco Bells, the Waffle Houses, the Buc-ee's, and they haven't really hit the little hole in the wall places yet that make, I think, America even more unique. Is the little diners and the little spots that you saw as a kid, or you went in with your grandparents, and they're hitting the big stuff.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They're seeing all the stuff that's, what we would call capitalism and marketing. But, America has many layers. It's kind of like an onion. You just kind of keep pulling back, and there's something unique there to find and see. And it is cool. I'm hoping that as all of these folks are here, they're taking full advantage of things, buying a lot of good stuff, contributing to the economy, and staying out of trouble.
It's just enjoying themselves and seeing what a great country
Maybe somebody
is.
will take them out and do something unique, uniquely Southern. Like, I know that they have a lot of folks over in Texas. Maybe they'll take them on a hog hunt. Somebody will get an opportunity to go ride one of those trucks with a tower on the back where you're going 100 miles an hour through the prairie grass, and you see the hogs everywhere. And but it's America is a wonderful place, and I think sometimes you lose sight of that.
We do. We absolutely do. But you made this point, and you're absolutely right. There is a reason that people from all over the world try to come to America legally or illegally, and it's not because it's some sort of hellscape run by a dictator. It's because it's the greatest country in the history of the world, and people want to come and be part of it.
I agree. I mean, I'm proud to be an American right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, we're not going to always agree on everything. I hope we don't. That would be boring.
It would be boring.
That would be terrible.
But it's the freedoms that we've got that make such a difference. I mean, the First Amendment is such an extraordinary thing, and you think about it. Like, you and I are able to get on here. We can say great things about the president. We can say awful things about the president. When we walk out of here, we're going to hop in our cars and go home. Right. We're not going to walk out of here and have somebody go, "Oh, you made divisive comments today. We're going to put you in jail," which you're seeing in some parts of the world.
Just waiting for you at your car over there.
Exactly.
Got the handcuffs out, ready to go, and then interrogate you for 18 hours. You don't get that here. So.
Well, they, the UK, and we've got
what a mess.
Douglas Carswell's coming in, and Douglas is here to talk about Mississippi and American politics, but he's from the UK and used to be in Parliament, so I'm gonna bring up some UK stuff with him. They've just banned social media for children 16 and under, which I think is probably a good thing for children 16 or under. But the tricky piece of it is for adults to continue to use it, you got to register to prove that you're old enough to be using it and give them your identity. Mm-hmm. And the UK is literally punishing people for putting things on Twitter that are divisive. Things like men are men and women are women. I mean, I'm not talking about truly evil thoughts, but if you just express basic biology in the United Kingdom, that may get you a visit from the police in some places.
There was a group across the channel a while back called the Gestapo. They were pretty good at that stuff,
Yeah.
Long before the Internet. They kind of knew what you were doing in advance of you doing it, because they had a network of people that they were paying to rat on you. I'm imagining that the English that may have had a grandparent or somebody that fought in that war probably remember a little bit about that level of fascism and intrusion. Maybe they don't want that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, quite frankly. Most people, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, one bad apple can spoil the bunch, but it's best to get rid of the apple and move it over here. And I think you're trying to do too much. Maybe you step back a little bit. And
but the net effect of this ban is that you effectively have to register.
That's what I'm saying.
So
you're trying to
get you.
Yeah, you're trying to get one person. So now 30 people are going, what? I'm not doing anything wrong.
Well, I wonder if they're not doing it on purpose. I mean, I think there are a lot of people in power in Europe, and I frankly think there's some people on the left over here who think things would go more smoothly if we could just suppress some opinions and comments from people.
Yeah,
and so
make it a lot easier for a lot of folks if you didn't have to have the masses out here. Having anything to say. You can say, well, let them eat cake. And that's we remember those days through history.
That's the awesome thing about the First Amendment that we've got is the inability for government to come in and regulate speech. Because I can tell you, every elected official at some point wishes they could get a reporter not to tell a story. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not saying any of them would actually want to suppress it. But you cannot be in public life and at some point not get an inquiry from the press where you go, I really wish they weren't going to write this.
Well, and people are human.
You can't stop
too.
them. And that is one of the great parts of our country is that you do not have the ability to go, Lance, you can't tell that story. You can't talk about that. That's prohibited.
And you can try, but it's probably going to come out anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they tried to suppress this story, and you get in trouble for doing those things. For the suppression of free speech, again, people are human. They're going to make mistakes, and I think one of the things here is you just got to own up to it. In most cases, forgiveness is there for you.
Yeah, no, that's
as
true.
A politician or as a human being, but you have to be willing to go. Yeah, I messed up, and that wasn't right, and I'm not ever going to do this again. And whatever that penalty may be, I'm willing to pay that. If you're willing to do that, I think there's a lot of forgiveness in this world. It's those that that mess up and go. They're kind of proud of it.
Well, we mostly covered weather in the first segment this morning.
Now
but
philosophy.
If you're just now joining us, make sure to get an umbrella. That's the real takeaway on weather today. Is if you don't know where your
all
umbrella
over the
is,
state.
Get yourself another cup of coffee and start looking for it.
Yeah, it's copy and paste rain today. So that is your weather outlook for the day is rain and more rain.
Y'all, we're coming up on a break. Stick with us. We'll talk a little sports, maybe some birthdays after this break. This is Lucian Smith here with Lance on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Living right is easy. What goes wrong, you're causing it to drown. Didn't want to turn that way, you're causing it to drown. Doesn't make a difference now, you're causing it to drown. Silence knows, can't drown.
From the Seabrook
Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi and the SuperTalk app.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Lance, one theme that seems to be emerging on the C Spire text line is how you consistently have bangers coming in and out for our bumpers, which I completely agree with.
I love being able to do that. It's a wonderful treat to get to pick music and wake up in the morning and go, all right, what are we going with today?
It's strong stuff as usual.
That was one of my favorites there. Little Joe Satriani, Summer. We're in the middle of it, I guess.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Summer.
Although, are we technically in summer yet?
I don't know, but it feels like it in the South.
It sure feels like summer.
I was reading some report the other day that was talking about all the data centers and the amount of heat and electricity and energy that they put out, and comparing that to what the world uses literally in a day. And that are we really feeling and sensing that things are just warmer, or is it really getting warmer? You know, I mean, with all the excess, electricity and energy maybe floating around out there. Because I can tell you, 92 feels like 180 now. I'm not sure if you feel that way, but man. Well, I know we got some things you might want to get to this morning, like some birthdays and some what happened on this day. A lot of stuff, actually. Birthdays are okay.
Yeah.
A little bit. But there's a couple in there, like Tupac Shakur.
I know. I wondered if we were going to have a Tupac bumper.
Yeah, we might have one. Yeah, a little California in there. I was a Tupac fan. I liked him as an actor, too. What was it? Poetic Justice. What was that with him and the Jackson girl, Janet?
I don't know that I saw that.
Yeah, they rode around in the back of like a post office van. The whole movie was basically. I was
probably more, not probably. I was more Biggie than Tupac if I had to decide one of those two tribes.
Well, Phil Mickelson, big golfer.
Yeah,
56 years old. Roberto Duran, 75 years old today. Geronimo, the Apache leader, he was born on this day and passed in 1909.
Maybe I shouldn't have med the birthdays. These are some
not
good
bad.
birthdays.
I mean, there's not the biggest names in there, but there's some pretty good ones. And then Stan Laurel. People go, who's that? Who's Stan Laurel? He's a comedian, and he was the other part of the Laurel and Hardy Show. 1965, he passed away. And does anybody remember Laurie Metcalf from Roseanne?
Yeah,
71 years old today. John Cho, 54 years old, Star Trek fame. And MC Ren from NWA, 57 years old today. So,
does John Cho is it Star Trek fame, or is he just Star Trek of? I mean, is he just John Cho of Star Trek? Because I had to Google him.
Yeah, of Star Trek. Yeah, I guess. I'm trying to remember. Was he which? Chekhov, is that the guy?
I'm
trying to remember.
I
don't remember.
I honestly don't know. And I'm not hating on Star Trek.
No,
I'm a nerd. I just didn't remember.
I grew up with the William Shatner. My dad loved it when it would come on, and he would sit over there in the chair, and as soon as Star Trek would come on, that old grainy, intro with I have the theme. It's one of my favorites, but he would go, Captain James T. Kirk here, stardate 495764. I mean, he would always. I mean, that was like he'd have his own little intro. Every time it came on.
Your dad would.
Oh yeah, always. As soon as it came on, he was, "This is James T. Kirk here." So I love the old stuff. I never really got into the newer ones as much. A few things happened on this day that were pretty cool. 1929, Otto E. Funk. Not Forrest Gump, but Otto E. Funk. He completed his 4,165-mile walk from New York to San Francisco. Well, I mean, that's interesting all within itself. He was 62 years old when he did it, but one of the things that he did along the way was he played his violin the whole time.
The whole time he was walking?
4,165 miles, 183 days, and he played his violin the whole time.
He walked the whole way in 183 days?
Yeah, I think that's where they got the movie Forrest Gump from, basically.
Interesting.
Yeah. Otto E. Funk, Forrest Gump. I mean, just throwing that out there. Seemed a pretty interesting correlation. 1935, Congress accepted FDR's New Deal and enacted the Social Security Act of 1935 and later amendments that provided pensions to the aged, benefit payments to dependent mothers, crippled children, and blind people, and the unemployed insurance. FDR signed it the following August, and it became law. That was a pretty big deal, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see here. Another one that was pretty big on this day in history, folks may remember, was 1992. Caspar Weinberger, the Secretary of Defense from 81 to 87, he was indicted on the Iran-Contra charge. So go back a few years, we're still dealing with Iran today. Hopefully no one
that's the truth.
Hopefully no one will get indicted on any kind of charges out there. Another interesting one that I didn't even think about until I saw it, and I was like, I kind of remember that. 1998, a 40-year-old Florida woman gave birth in the first ever live birth, and it was done on the internet before an estimated audience of 2 million people.
I don't remember that at all.
I vaguely remember that going, I don't want to see this.
Yeah, I don't understand
It's just not something I want to watch.
I loved how the notes called it the first ever, as though, it was like the first moving picture show.
Right,
That didn't really catch on.
Yeah, that's the Guinness Book of World Records. I guess when you want to be the first, you got to do something a little crazy nowadays, but in 2008, California began issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples on this day. In 2008, I think there was a couple other ones that I really liked out there, too. On this day in 1963, Soviet cosmonaut Valentina V. Tereshkova, she became the first woman to travel in space, having been launched into orbit aboard the spacecraft Vostok 6. She did 48 orbits in 71 hours.
Cool.
The Soviets were pumping them out back then.
They sure were.
slinging folks out into outer space. Didn't they have the dog first?
Yeah, I think that's right. It was the first one to go up there.
And let's see here. German politician, I love the name, Helmut Kohl. He presided over the integration of East Germany into West Germany. Not a small feat there, knowing what they dealt with for quite some time.
Absolutely.
And became the first chancellor of a unified Germany in 1945. He died at the ripe old 87 years old. And a big day for women, obviously. Liu Yueng became the first Chinese woman in space. And this was in 2012, so a few years after the Russians, about, 50? And she and 2 other crew members were launched aboard the spacecraft Shenzhou 9. So a lot of stuff happening for the ladies today in history. Another one, Noor Inayat Khan became the first female wireless operator to be sent into occupied France by the British military during World War II. Her work supporting the resistance led to her execution, though, by Nazi troops in 1944.
Goodness.
Yeah, so again, a lot of cool stuff happening, but that was a rough one there. And then this was the end of the 100-day period of Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal legislation, 1933. We mentioned a little of that. And then in 1933, another big thing happened, which was the FDIC was created for the United States under the authority of the Federal Reserve Act in 1933, and they built that big old building up there. And so now you got... Because of that, deposit insurance.
Deposits are insured. Yeah,
making people keep their money in. And then finally on this day, one of the things that kind of shaped as the world moved into the more modern era was the Lausanne Conference. It held to liquidate Germany's payment of reparations to the former Allied and associated powers of World War I. And the conference opened on this day. And you could say one of the reasons probably that led to even further disagreements in the near future.
Absolutely.
All that money. And it was, that was the Treaty of Versailles kind of set it up roughly, and then Lausanne was there to liquidate it years later. So those are some of the things I had for you on this day in history.
Well, not a whole lot of time left, but you want to give us some quick sports before we come up on this break?
Brendan Sorsby, because he got caught gambling on his own team and got banned from playing. Then they said he can play. Now he's going to be banned from playing in college again. So what did he decide to do? He's declaring for the draft, man,
Was he the one that also sued? There was some sort of litigation about him? Or
he's the guy that bet on all kind of thousands of games, including his own game. Brendan Sorsby was Texas Tech quarterback. But he's going to go into the supplemental draft ahead of the 2026 season. So a little interesting wrinkle in development there. You got the U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills this weekend. That'll be teeing off on Thursday the 18th. And that'll start out on the USA Network in Peacock. So big event happening. The last time it was held at U.S. Open in Shinnecock in 2018, Brooks Koepka won that. No player finished under par for the whole week. So that's
should be a good one to watch.
That'll
I'm
humble
looking forward to it.
These pros will be humbled a little bit this time. We didn't mention this yesterday, but the Hurricanes beat the Golden Knights for the Stanley Cup Final 3-0 on Sunday. Wanted to make sure we got that. Obviously,
I don't know that I've ever seen a hockey match.
I've gone to a minor league one, and they're a trip.
I'm sure they're entertaining. I just never done it.
That shows up and beats up people, and then he runs back. They throw him in the penalty box. It's wild, man. I mean, hockey is wild, especially minor league hockey. Obviously, a full cup schedule today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday we'll have the Americans playing Australia at 2:00, and so all those other groups got to catch up before. And play out before we get to Friday, but that'll be a big one there with Australia and America, former British colonies, battling it out. And then what was the last thing? Georgia dropped it to Oklahoma 4-3 yesterday. Everybody thought Georgia was just going to cruise through the tournament. Hey, I picked Oklahoma, though, on that side of the bracket.
Oh, that's
and
right.
I picked Ole Miss on the other side, and that didn't work out well. But 50-50 wouldn't be bad.
That's right.
And then Alabama got stroked by Texas 14-2. Texas hammered out 13 hits, scored 14 runs, and that is going to be –
And that was an elimination game.
Yeah, that's going to be the end of Alabama there. So Georgia's still hanging around. They will play Texas, and Oklahoma is so far the leader in the clubhouse on that side of the bracket. Tuesday's matchups should bring you up to West Virginia. 1:00 today on ESPN. That will be an elimination game with Troy. And then you also have another game today. The Georgia-Texas game will be coming on strong at 7:00 on ESPN. So that's where you stand. 2 elimination games going today. Teams will be going home. That field will get whittled down a little tighter. Do you have, while we have about 10, 15 seconds to go, and I forgot to put a bump in, so do you have a favorite?
I do not, to tell you the truth.
No fave.
Other than sticking around to listen to the lottery update after this, guys.
Good morning.
On your radio, on our app, or on your smart speaker. We're always free. SuperTalk Mississippi. Your home for mornings with Richard Cross.
It is time for your Mississippi Lottery Update, brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. Lotto America had no jackpot winner. The estimated jackpot for Wednesday, June 17th is $29 million. The numbers from Monday, June 15th were 1, 15, 18, 30, 46, a star ball of 2, and an all-star bonus multiplier of 3. The Powerball has an estimated jackpot for Wednesday, June 17th of $283 million. That's got a cash value of just under $127 million. The numbers from Monday, June 15th were 25, 55, 57, 60, 62, with a Powerball of 23 and a Power Play multiplier of 2. No jackpot winner in Mega Millions, but the jackpot for Tuesday, June 16th is $430 million, an estimated cash value of $191 million. The numbers from Friday, June 12th were 9, 17, 24, 39, 51, and the Mega Ball was 3. No millionaire winner in Millionaire for Life, but the numbers from last night's drawing were 12, 14, 20, 54, 58, and a millionaire ball of 4. Lotto America rolls on. The jackpot is now an estimated $29.89 million with an estimated cash value of $13.39 million for Wednesday's drawing, which will be the 132nd consecutive roll since the jackpot was last hit back in August of 2025.
I figured it may take till like 2030 for this one to hit.
It's getting bigger and bigger. It's getting bigger and bigger, but the tickets are only $1, with the option to add the $1 All-Star bonus to multiply your non-jackpot winning prize, or easy match for another $1 to win instantly. Get your tickets at your nearest retailer for tonight's drawing. You can always check winning numbers or see if your ticket is a winner by downloading the official Mississippi Lottery app. And tune in to the Lottery's Facebook Live broadcast at 10 a.m. this morning to hear the winners of the final supersized Millionaire Maker bonus promotion. Don't miss it. Set a reminder and tune in to Mississippi Lottery Facebook Live at 10 a.m. Follow the Mississippi Lottery on all social media to stay up to date on all things lottery. Well, a few people here on Savannah's list who are happier and wealthier after playing the Mississippi Lottery. A Raymond woman won $5,000 on a Cash 4 ticket from Anch Food Mart in Jackson. A Carthage man won $2,500 on a Cash 4 ticket from Shell Mart Carthage in Carthage. A Tupelo woman won $2,500 on a Cash Pop ticket from Kroger 471 in Tupelo. A Jackson man won a top prize, $100,000 on a $5 10X winner ticket purchased from Circle K store in Pearl. And a Lamar man won $10,000 on a $10 Wild Cherry ticket bought at RSO Food and Fuel in Lamar. And finally, a Grenada man won $10,000 as well on a $30 Millionaire Maker ticket purchased from Sprint Mart 4114 in Grenada.
Well, I have something that may correlate here.
What's that?
Well, on this day in 1911, a company was founded. We know it as IBM today. And I asked myself, what did IBM do in 1911?
That's a good question. Counted
what was the actual name of the company, though?
International Business Machines?
Before
I don't
was
know.
known as IBM.
Not a clue.
Computing Tabulating Recording Company, or CTR. It was a combination, eventually, of 3 different companies. One of them did punch card tabulating, The other did time recording systems, and then the final was an industrial scale and weighing machine company. So those three merged to create IBM originally, Computing Tabulating Recording Company. So, yeah, that was not a great name. So they eventually came up with IBM.
Before you had marketing consultants.
Yeah, you're thinking about how you process all this stuff, but you go back to 1911. We've come a long way with punch cards and, weighing. Somebody put up something big on a scale, and they had to tabulate these things and keep up with it. So apparently that was what IBM originally did right out of the gate.
Well, they would have had a better name if they had talked to STMM Digital. If you own or run a small business, can customers find you online? With the power of STMM Digital, you can reach potential customers and get more referrals and repeat business. STMM Digital's highly trained and trusted staff is ready to work with you to help your business capitalize on the power of digital marketing. Call 601-991-2305 or go to stmmdigital.com to get started today.
What a job they're rolling into that with. I mean, if you have a terrible corporate name and you're looking to sell more of your product, give us a call.
Absolutely.
You do not want to be Computing Tabulating Recording Company before you realize it that you need to be IBM, right?
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Give us a call. Y'all, that was our lottery update brought to you by the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. Stick with us. We got more great show coming up after this break. But first, Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Here she starts to be a cry. Fly to the seabirds, scattered like lost words. Wheel to the storm and fly.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
Where you come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woke up this morning with a funny feeling.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour here of Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. This is Lucian Smith here with Lance, in for Richard as you start your Tuesday. This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. That's where MWG Employer Services comes in. They can provide a full range of employer services plus a custom plan that fits you. Call today at 601-206-7966 or go to mwgemployerservices.com. Got a great show coming up today. Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, will be with us in the next segment. And then coming up at 8 o'clock, Professor Chris Green, formerly of Ole Miss, currently at The Ohio State University
the man of many
School
hats.
of Law. That's exactly right. It's quite. I didn't even go through the full list of titles that are there.
You need about 3 minutes. I
right.
love when we have the intelligentsia on from collegia and universities. I have to find a way to fit their titles, in because you got to pick one. When you put it on the screen, there's not big enough to put all of them. You got to go, all right, what's the most important title that they have? That's difficult. They all sound important. Hey, one public service announcement I wanted to mention today. Didn't get to it today because today will actually be the debut of this young man, Cooper Pratt. He got called up by the Brew Crew. He was drafted, I think, 3 years ago, 6th round out of Magnolia Heights, Mississippi. The number 4 prospect in the Brew Crew's minor league system will be called up. He got called up yesterday. Will be playing his first game today against the Cleveland Guardians at American Family Field. So if anybody's interested in tuning into that and watching Mississippi and Cooper Pratt make his debut, went straight out of high school, moved up the ladder. He's done a great job. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Obviously, we're all proud of all the Mississippians that make it up, but anytime you get that first opportunity, man, that you're never going to forget that.
Well, it's always great when people have a Mississippi connection and you get to see them be successful on a very big stage like that. So good luck to him.
Yes, sir.
Well, Thomas in Greenwood says he's decided to pretend to stop enriching uranium in exchange for $300 billion and wants to know where he goes to get that money.
Sure, yeah.
Look, here's the thing.
Thomas has probably got a stockpile back there in the back 40. You know.
If I figure out where to get it, Thomas, I'll let you know. We can split it. Here's the problem with the Iran deal is we just don't know what's in it yet. We know it's been signed.
Yeah.
We know the administration says there's a deal. The Iranians say there's a deal. But we got to know what the deal is before you can really evaluate it. And I think the quality of the deal obviously depends on what's actually in it. And people are, as is generally the case in Washington, you've got folks leaking on both sides of this, or at least telling people they know what's in the deal. And the folks who are, big supporters of the president are saying that this is a deal whereby they're going to stop funding Hamas and Hezbollah. They're going to have internal reforms. They are going to abandon their nuclear program. And then you have folks who are critical of the administration who are telling you that none of that is true, that they're going to get $300 billion without much in the way of conditions, and that they're only agreeing to discuss their nuclear program. And that, if that happens, that's a disaster. But you've got different messages coming out of the administration. And again, Thomas is pointing this out, and he's right. The president is saying that there's no $300 billion for the Iranians. At the same time, the vice president is saying that there might be a way for them to get access to that $300 billion. So a lot to learn about that deal. If the people who are supportive of the president have good information, then it's a great deal that we should be happy about. If the people who are not supportive of the president have the correct information, then it's a terrible deal, and we've killed a bunch of people to essentially resurrect the Obama Iran deal. And until we see it, we just don't know whether it's a deal that we ought to be celebrating or whether it's one that ought to be criticized.
Well, the 10 points that I'm aware of, and again, I mean, I'm sure this is a fluid situation, as people like to mention, but sanctions relief, unfreezing of assets, control of the Strait, U.S. military withdrawal, non-aggression and an end to hostilities, war reparations, nuclear enrichment, cessation of the IAEA regulations, end of UN Security Council measures, and a binding UN mandate. Those seem to be the 10 pieces that are going to be dealt with over these 60 days.
Yeah.
And again, I don't think any of us have any idea where this thing's going to end.
I think that's right. And I think until there is a final negotiated deal with the details out there, it's tough to really estimate. I mean, it's tough to know whether we got a good deal or we got a bad deal.
And I guess that would throw me into what do you think America needs out of those, say, 10? What are the 3 or 4 biggies that you need? Me in the very beginning was no nukes, straight open, no proxies, and let's kind of get back to business as usual as much as possible.
I think that's exactly right. I think
those are the 4 I really was on.
Those are the ones. But those are huge and massive changes. Yeah. So I think people's skepticism that we're going to get there is very reasonable because that's a huge deal. But yeah, if you were able to get the Iranians to stop funding terrorism, which ought to have been at least one of the reasons that we began this war with Iran, that's a victory. That's absolutely a victory. But if you don't have that, if you give them a bunch of money, which they're then going to turn around and give to Hamas and Hezbollah, you're just pouring gasoline on the fire. You're not making anything better.
I wonder, if there's a funny King of the Hill episode where Hank and his father get sideways with each other, and they can't get along. And somehow or another, President Jimmy Carter shows up to build a Habitat for Humanity house. And, so it kind of keeps going. But eventually, Jimmy Carter's brought in to mediate the disagreement between the father and the son. And they just go on and on for hours, and they just can't agree on anything. And finally, Jimmy Carter says, look, can we just agree that you guys don't want each other to die? And they're like, yeah, we don't want each other to die. And he's all right, we've got somewhere we can start now. That's where we start this negotiation. And you wonder if it's kind of like that over in Iran, where you've got to find one common thing that you can agree on. We don't want to destroy everything, whatever it may be. I wonder where that came, what that point was where they finally said, okay, now we can come forth now with some logical way of communicating. We can put demands out or requests, but at some point there was one thing that you went, okay, we can start here.
Right.
And you always I wonder what if we'll ever learn that one day. Like, what was the one thing where the Iranians and the Americans finally were like, all right, we can agree right here?
That's a very good question. But I also think, to that point, that's part of the reason that settling the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is so is so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's not just about who gets which street, who gets which block of land. There's a significant portion of the leadership of the Palestinians who want to completely destroy all of Israel. And so, to your point, can we at least agree we want both of you to live?
Yeah.
If you start with no, that's an impossible
you can't move forward
situation.
From there. And I think that every time I see that episode, I think of the situation in the Middle East. I think of Ukraine, and like there's got to be a baseline somewhere where you go, okay, we can agree,
right,
that we can live somehow, some way with each other without creating hostilities, or whatever it may be. In this country, that we're so diverse that we forget sometimes how good we have it.
Absolutely.
We got people from all over the world living here, practicing whatever religion, whatever culture, eating whatever food, and we all seem to kind of get along well enough. And, you're not invading neighbors like Mexico and Canada. Although I think Nick Fuentes would love for us to invade Canada and Mexico and make one big, Western conglomerate. But, at the end of the day, we with all the problems we have in this country, we seem to we're able to communicate.
That's right.
And find some baseline of agreement with one another.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think that's part of what makes it so difficult over there is there's just a different mindset. If you
level
start,
of hatred.
Exactly. Well, you start with that level of hatred where you want to completely destroy Israel, and you're willing to die because you think you're going to paradise as a result of it. That's not a standard military calculation where you're trying to figure out what people can tolerate, what they're willing to dedicate. So it makes the whole thing much more complicated than it might otherwise be.
Well, and you spending so much time in finance, we use game theory an awful lot, and it's basically like an attribute system, right, where you attribute value to all these different things. And, at the end of the day, it's very difficult when somebody has a completely different value system as you do to accurately predict what their behavior is going to be, because you really don't know them very well. And you have a hard time reasoning with them because you don't think that way. So
right.
Kind of coming to that point is very difficult, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Y'all, we got a great show coming up. Douglas Carswell will be with us in the next segment, talk about the good work the Mississippi Center for Public Policy is doing in and around education and what his thoughts are more generally on things in Mississippi. Stick with us. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi.
What I find is pleasing and I'm feeling fine. Love is so confusing, there's no peace of mind. In life here I'm losing you, it's just no good. You're cheesing like this.
Good morning from the Venom.
Where you come first for news. Fast and free. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, y'all. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Remember, Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Well, with us in studio is Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Good morning, Douglas.
Morning, Lucian. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be here.
You, I assume you were following the World Cup. Not to stereotype Englishmen, but I know y'all are fans of soccer.
I personally prefer real football to soccer.
There we go.
But the old British in me still pays a lot of attention to the Soccer World Cup, and it's happening here in America. A lot of interest, particularly from Europeans coming over.
Lance and I were talking about this earlier. It's been fun to watch these social media posts of Europeans enjoying the U.S. And I'm curious, do you sense, I mean, clearly, I would assume you're still in contact with a lot of people in Europe and in the UK. Do you think the people who are over here enjoying it are surprised by how much they like the U.S., or do you think most of them already knew they were going to enjoy being over here?
I think most of them are absolutely stunned. They feel the way I did when I arrived 5 years ago, because when a Brit or a European thinks about America, they tend to think about Washington or the Golden Gate Bridge or New York. And what the social media tweets, particularly by this German guy called Freddie, are really what Freddie is really discovering is our America, SuperTalk's America, small town America. I don't mean that in a condescending way, but Oxford, Mississippi, Auburn, Alabama. And they're discovering that not only is Buc-ee's a really awesome gas station, but if they dig in a little further, they'll soon discover that, the manager at Buc-ee's earns more than the British Prime Minister. There's a huge amount of wealth here. A mid-sized college town has a stadium bigger than their national football stadiums. And I think it comes as a shock that not only is America materially more advanced, but maybe there's something in the culture, particularly the Southern culture, where a lot of the growth is, that explains this. So when I see these Europeans doing this, it's a subject close to my heart. And having moved here 5 years ago, rather like these Europeans coming here now and discovered the awesomeness of Mississippi and America, I kind of got fed up with listening to people explaining why Mississippi was at the bottom of every list. So I started to compile a list of all the ways in which Mississippi actually does better than other countries in Europe and other states in America. And so we've launched this website called MississippiWins.com, and it's a way of showing all the ways in which this state this state is ahead. You can go on there and you can compare Mississippi's growth rates to growth rates of Tennessee and Alabama. In the past 5 years, we've grown twice as fast as Alabama.
Fascinating.
Per person, Mississippi now makes more cars than Germany. Our GDP per capita has overtaken that of Great Britain. Kids in Mississippi read better than the kids in California. We wanted to put all this information on one site, and you can go there, MississippiWins.com. You can see it, and you can share it with people. It's a great tool when you go on social media and you get someone condescend because you happen to be from Mississippi and they're thinking riverboat, river, cotton fields, old Mississippi. Go on there and show them actually the new Mississippi Wins, MississippiWins.com.
I have enjoyed watching your social media, Douglas, because you post a lot about this, and it really is interesting because even most Mississippians, I think, wouldn't assume that our GDP would be greater than that of the UK. Or we're about, what are some other Western European countries that where Mississippi itself is comparable on GDP?
I think Mississippi is now about to overtake GDP per capita of Germany. There's some dispute depending which way you look at the data, but I thought it happened last year. Some economist friends of mine say no, it's going to happen this year. But Mississippi's per capita GDP will overtake that of Germany. If it hasn't already done so, it will do so by the end of this year. Quite extraordinary. Mississippians have a standard of living roughly a third greater than those of people in Spain and Italy. Quite a staggering statistic. Given the importance of AI and the associated importance of cheap energy, if you look at some of the stats on investment in data centers, for every $500 invested per person in a data center in Mississippi, there's something like $10 being invested per person in data centers in Britain. And then the Europeans wonder why they don't have AI capability. It's an extraordinary website because it reveals just how well not only the American South is doing, but how well Mississippi is doing.
It really is extraordinary because even Mississippians, we fiercely defend our state when anybody else is critical of it, but we all do have a tendency to not be as high on the state of Mississippi as we probably ought to as a group.
As an outsider, I can probably, if I can say this, see it in a way that some people in Mississippi don't appreciate it. If something's familiar to you, you don't appreciate it the way if it's new to you. And it's new to me, so I think I can appreciate Mississippi in a way that sometimes Mississippians don't. We've also got this facility on MississippiWins.com, so you can go in and see what does it mean for your neighborhood. How has the growth people talk about actually worked in your neighborhood. So I live in Rankin County. I went into MississippiWins.com, put in Rankin County, and it shows you in a single year there's been a 5% increase in incomes. It shows you how unemployment trends have fallen. It shows you how much inward investment there's been. It's a way of you actually seeing, when you hear the governor talking about the Mississippi miracle, well, what does it mean for you? Go on to MississippiWins.com and have a look what it means for your neighborhood. It's a very powerful tool for doing it. I also think, we can talk about the wins for Mississippi. Why is Mississippi doing so well?
I was going to ask you, what do you attribute that all to, Douglas?
Well, we've got a list of things. I think it's some of the free market conservative reforms that have been pioneered in this state over the past decade or so. Labour market deregulation in 2021, flat tax reform in 2022, low energy costs. We said no to the Biden renewable bondoogles, which pushed up energy costs in other neighbouring states. Income tax elimination this year, starting to repeal some of that certificate of need red tape. This is what a good conservative administration should do. We've been doing it, and we're starting to see the results. We've got a lot more to do. We still don't do well in many measures, but Mississippi shows it's nothing inevitable about how you grow. It's nothing in the water or the physics or the geography of Mississippi. It's, do you do free market reforms in Jackson? If you do the free market reforms in Jackson, Mississippi can grow as fast as any state.
It really is an extraordinary website. If you should go to MississippiWins.com. I'm playing with it here. You can pull up living standards, comparing now Mississippi to Belgium. It's incredible. Y'all put together a really interesting piece of data here, Douglas.
Someone suggested we should also include per capita SEC to NFL players. but if you've got suggestions on how to improve it, let us know. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and if you want to be part of this conversation or have questions for Douglas Carswell, send us a text at the C Spire text line 601-879-4395. What out of this legislative session were there things that MCPP were really pushing for this year that you were happy or unhappy to see happen?
I'll say straight up, I think it was probably one of the most disappointing sessions in the past 5 or 6 years. Very little achieved. HB2, which was giving parents control over education, was the flagship reform. Kudos to Speaker Jason White for pushing for that. It was killed in the Senate in 84 seconds, frankly, rather disgracefully. But apart from that, the truth is not much of substance really happened. There was a certificate of need repeal bill which began the process of deregulation. It's a very technical issue, but it's important. It will lower healthcare costs for all of us. But the significance of this session was the insignificance of any legislation passed. I think if we want to keep growing with the trajectory that we're on, we need in 27 and 28 and perhaps in the governor's election to seriously ask, why is it that Mississippi is now the only state in this part of the South that doesn't give parents control of their tax dollars?
I think that's you mean specifically in the context of education?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. What other, beyond choice, are there other policy issues that you would expect to be pushing for in the next few years to help see Mississippi grow this way?
Income tax, we passed the legislation to eliminate it, but if lawmakers carry on spending public money the way they have been in the past, we're not going to be able to actually see that income tax elimination, so controlling public spending. I think certificate of need repeal, it's a really technical issue, but basically healthcare costs in Mississippi are higher here than they should be, higher than in neighboring states, because we've got this protectionist legal regime that prevents competitors competing with the existing players in the healthcare sector. We've got to get rid of those restrictions. It's technical, but it's really, really important.
We're coming up on a break here. Douglas, can you stick with us for another segment? Y'all stick with us. We've got Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Coming up more after this break.
From the Seabrook.
From the heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C., this is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, y'all. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Still with us in studio is Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. A few people have asked who popped in late to the conversation. Tell us again the website if people want to go check it out.
MississippiWins.com. That's MississippiWins.com.
Well, it is a great website and great opportunity to remind ourselves that we are Mississippi is doing much better than we often give ourselves credit for. We were talking a little bit about school choice, and people are. One of the questions that's coming in on the C-SPAR text line is how the states around us are doing, given that we're the only one that hasn't implemented meaningful choice. But how are they doing in terms of education?
I think the honest answer is we haven't yet seen the data, and we haven't yet seen the data because it's so new. Alabama's only just done it, Tennessee's only just done it, Arkansas's only just done it. Louisiana isn't quite there yet, but we don't actually know from the neighbouring states. But I think we can look at some of the states a little further afield who have done it for longer, such as Arizona and West Virginia. And very, very clearly what you see there is a shift from parents going to the school that they're told to go to, allocated by zip code, and some of them exercising that choice. And the interesting thing is this is pushing up standards in public schools. It's actually better for existing public schools because it's forced the public schools in Arizona and West Virginia to raise their game, to look at what it is that they need to do to make sure they keep students in those schools. So there's evidence from states where school choice has been around for a couple of years that shows there is improvement. We haven't yet got the data though from neighbouring states, but I'm pretty confident that when we start to see the results come in from Alabama and Tennessee in particular, we will see improvements in standards in the public schools there too.
It feels like it feels like it. We are an outlier in the Southeast, and that am I right?
Yep. The
only state that doesn't have meaningful school choice?
Yep, absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think it's the single biggest thing now holding us back, because it's education is not just it's not just about education, it's also an economic development issue. If you really want to see Mississippi take off, I think you now have to give parents the choices that they have in neighboring states. By the way, I think so many parents in Mississippi are now aware that if they lived on the other side of the state line, if they lived in Tennessee, they could get $7,000 and decide where to send their kid. If they lived in Alabama, they could do that. And I think that is beginning to percolate through Mississippi. And I think pressure for school choice is going to become very difficult to stop. Now, we've got a series of elections happening next year. I think it's really important to recognize that, there's a legitimate case against school choice. And I have, respect for people who think differently to the way I think. But it's not a conservative position. And if you want to stand as a credible conservative, if you want to be the Republican candidate in Mississippi for a statewide office, the credible thing to do is to support parent power. If you don't support parent power, if you side with the teacher unions, if you oppose school choice, that's a respectable position, but it's a left-wing, non-conservative position.
Is choice going to be sort of the signature issue for MCPP the next couple of years, or are there a handful of things y'all will be focused on?
We're focused on other things, but I think it's the overarching issue. And let me tell you why, Lucian. In a few weeks' time, we're going to be celebrating 250 years of America. We're going to be celebrating the creation and birth of the most successful republic in human history. The tragedy is that over the past 20 or 30 years, there have been people in America who denigrated the American achievement, who take exception to the notion of American exceptionalism, who do everything at every opportunity to teach young Americans to always think the worst of their country. We would never have ended up with this woke madness if we had school choice 20 or 30 years ago. School choice is about not just improving education, it's about correcting the way in which the left has tried to capture the institutions of this country and turn this country into a North American version of France. And that is what this is fundamentally about. It's not just about better standards. It's about ensuring that the values that make America the country that America is are passed on to the next generation. That can only be achieved with school choice by reconciling the values in the classroom and aligning them with the values in the family and the church outside.
Is that a uniquely American phenomenon that we have a certain segment of the elites actively denigrating the country in an institutional way?
It's an English-speaking world phenomenon.
Okay.
You get the same phenomenon in Australia, the same phenomenon in Britain, the same phenomenon in New Zealand and Canada. In fact, in Canada, it's gone to an even more extreme version. But there does seem to be something about the English-speaking world in which the way in which pseudo-elites, intellectual elites, fake elites who preside over our institutions try to show their superiority by denigrating the culture and the values and the civilization that gave rise to them in the first place.
I don't think about the French elites or the Chinese elites or talking about how terrible their country is in a routine, sort of institutionalized way.
It would be unthinkable for people in China or Turkey or Russia to denigrate their countries. The people who run China are on the side of Team China, for good or bad.
Right.
Why is it that in America we have a generation of overeducated, over-credentials, so-called intellectuals in universities and HR departments and corporate America who seem to think that actually there's nothing special about America and that America should be somehow apologetic for everything that's happened? Right. It is a real problem. And, you know, if your elite is not on the side of your country, you don't need enemies. if your own elite is acting like that from within. And so we need to address this. We seriously need to tackle the fact that the progressive elite in America is America's own worst enemy. And if we don't do this, now, it becomes unmanageable. And I think one of the ways in which to do this is take back control of the education system from the left-wing teacher unions and ideologues who've used the teaching system to try to indoctrinate young Americans in progressive ideology. And the only way to do this is through school choice.
That is a compelling argument for school choice, separate and apart from the educational outcomes that I think it will bring. You've launched, along those lines in education, y'all launched a website. Is it Compare? I'm going to let you give the website so I don't mess it up for everybody.
CompareMySchool.com.
Okay.
It does what it says it does. CompareMySchool.com. You go on there and you can see exactly what your child's scores are like. So, for example, if your child has recently sat the ACT, go in there, plug in the school, plug in the ACT result. It's all confidential. It's all free. No need to sign up. And you can see in the privacy, I should say, of your own home how your kids' results compare to other kids in that school. CompareMySchool.com. Have a look at it. If you go on that website and you're happy with the results, great. But if you're not happy with the results, you might be shocked to see that you're getting an education for your child that you're not happy with that costs considerably more than it would do if they were in the local private school. So we give you the facts. We're not trying to push for anything with this website. It's purely CompareMySchool.com is a way for you to go in there, see how your individual child is doing, how their school is doing, and get the facts about what it's costing you as a parent and a taxpayer.
And presumably this would increase people's interest in having the freedom, having freedom to choose where they send their children.
If things are as great as the left-wing progressive politicians who oppose school choice in the capital say they are, then you're going to go on there and you're going to be absolutely happy with the way things are. But if, for example, you're a parent who sends your kid to Murrah High and it costs $16,000 a year and they're persistently and consistently at the bottom of every league table, you might just ask yourself, why should I, as a parent, not be able to take a portion of that $16,000 and send my child to a private school? There are schools like Redeemer's School here in Jackson, Mississippi, that are private, run by a church, that provide a absolutely first-class education. In fact, Redeemers has now just taken over the old building run by an old
Jackson Methodist Church, right?
Yeah.
No,
Jackson Public Schools, Chastain School.
Okay.
If you go in there and see the data, it becomes very difficult, I think, for you to justify and explain as a politician why families in Mississippi shouldn't have more control.
You briefly touched on certificates of need laws before the last break, but I hear the bumper coming in. Douglas, can you take one more segment with us?
Love to.
Y'all stick with us. We'll have more with Douglas Carswell after this break.
From the heart of Mississippi to the halls of Washington, D.C., this is Mornings with Richard Cross, your source for hard-hitting political insight and unfiltered truth. Now, here's more on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, y'all. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Ever notice how some places still know your name? At Community Bank, that's how banking works. We're a bank that knows community because we live here. And when you walk in, you're more than an account number. No matter what your banking needs are, here you'll talk to real people who care about your goals. Community Bank, a local bank built on relationships. Stop by your neighborhood location or learn more at communitybank.net. Just before that break, we were starting to talk. We're here with Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy, about certificate of need laws. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what those are and where things are on that policy change in Mississippi?
About 40 years ago, something called certificate of need laws were created, and they were intended to restrict the number of companies that could set up healthcare providing services. And they were brought in for good intentions at the time to try to control healthcare spending. They didn't work. They became basically a mechanism so that the existing healthcare providers could keep out the competition. And they've been around for 40 years ever since. And as a result of certificate of need laws, you've got a limited number of providers who can charge more than they would, knowing that there's no competition. Imagine if, for example, 40 years ago you had passed a law that said anyone who needed to open a restaurant needed permission of existing restaurants. That's what certificate of need does for the healthcare economy. So it traps us in a high-cost, low-choice healthcare model, and we need to get rid of the certificate of need laws. Now, obviously, a lot of lobby dollars are put into the system, and dinners are bought at Tico to try to make sure that lawmakers don't get rid of certificate of need, because the vested interests who have permission don't want competition. But we need to get rid of the laws. We saw a couple of laws passed this session for the very first time, which begin to remove certificate of need, and it's really encouraging and exciting. There are great lawmakers like Sam Creekmore and others who've been really pushing on this, and Hank Zuber, kudos to them. It's a tough fight, but it shows that they're genuine conservatives because they're willing to put principle ahead of what's convenient, and we're starting to see some results.
It does seem like there's been a real change there, because people have been talking about changing certificate of need laws for 15, 20 years in Mississippi, and with little success. A
couple of years ago, we published a paper by an author, Matt Mitchell, one of America's great experts on this, and we sent it around, and I think we're starting to see some effect, particularly the health board The health board, I think, now is of the view that things need to change. And I spent a lot of my time pushing against insiders to try to do the right thing. I now feel that actually people on the inside, some of the people that the governor appointed, they get this and they understand and they're trying to make it work. And they're trying to bring about change in a way that perhaps is a little more cautious than I would like. But they're basically on the free market conservative side now.
We only have a few minutes left, but there's been a lot of play on social media about sort of changes in the UK, these sort of, attacks, people trying to behead folks, the grooming gangs, scandal. I mean, what is it's tough to know as somebody who's not there and is not as connected as you are, how much of that is engagement farming on Twitter versus a real problem that's going on. I'm curious to get your take on it.
It would be easy for me to say, don't trust everything you see on social media. But the fact is what you've seen on social media actually happens. And what you've got to recognize in Britain, that it's essentially a country that was like America 30 years ago, that in the space of a generation has been run by people like Nancy Pelosi and run into the ground. Not just economically, they have the highest energy costs in the world, and they're struggling economically as a result. They're now poorer than Mississippi. They've also got tremendous demographic problems because, like the left in America who wanted to open the borders, in Britain they have opened the borders and they've allowed in millions of people into Britain who have nothing culturally in common with Britain, who come not to integrate and assimilate but to essentially to colonize. And we have at the same time a woke left-wing elite that doesn't want to apply uniform standards because it's terrified of being called racist. And so you have a two-tier justice system. You have the application of the law different depending on whether you're an indigenous Briton or not. And you've got a restless British population that is now fed up with this. Britain needs to find a new Margaret Thatcher. But unlike the old Margaret Thatcher who just had to fix the country's economy, Britain needs Margaret Thatcher that fixes the economy and fixes the demographic mess that Britain's in. So Britain, I think, should be a warning to America. Don't let the left wreck your country the way they've wrecked Britain.
That is a perfect note to end on right there, Douglas. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lucian.
We've had Douglas Carswell, the president and CEO of the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Stick with us. We got more coming up. Coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
It's time to get real.
Keeping it real.
It's time for you to get real with it.
And keeping it Mississippi. Your voice for statewide and national politics. Yes. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Remember, Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Well, I believe we have on the line Christopher Green, professor at the Ohio State University Law School and professor at the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society. How are you doing, Professor?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Appreciate your taking the time to be with us.
Sure. Not too much of the lunatic fringe, I hope, but nice, sensible, middle-of-the-road kind of stuff.
So talk to us a little bit about where we are in the we've got, 2 weeks left in the Supreme Court's term. Is that right?
Yeah, there's always a little fuzzy edge to the end of the term. If they really want to stay longer, they can stay to the end of June. Some of the very biggest decisions have been like the first couple of days of July, but almost always they're going to be done a few days before the end of June. So we're into less than 2 weeks, and we've got about 20 cases left, and we've got about 12, 13, 14 big cases. So just about every case left is going to be it's definitely something people have been looking forward to. Sometimes you get these big cases and everybody agrees on some off ramp that's a little less exciting, but they tend to be the big ones where they take the reason it's taking longer is because there's more back and forth between the dissents. So the majority responding to the dissents, modifying their arguments in response to that, and the back and forth process they take as long as they possibly can. Definitely the justices. That are into that. Some of them, some of the justices back in the day would just sort of like, Kennedy responding to Scalia would just like, okay, I said my thing. He's kind of raising all these cases. I'm not going to even respond to them. So if you're doing that, you can get it done more quickly. But if they're really taking care to respond to each other, which they do seem to be doing so more these days, you can press toward the end of June.
So at this point, all of these cases are probably decided in the sense that the court knows what the votes are. They're just circulating the dissent and the majority opinions to try to get them in final format.
So we have the arguments, and then that Friday they get together and they pass around the votes. They make the initial assignments. The initial draft of all of the majority opinions is due to the rest of the court by June 1st. So everything has been drafted, at least the initial form, by then. And then you have a chance to have a dissent, and then modifications. Once in a while, you'll see cases change the outcome in response to dissent. Somebody else was like, wow, I haven't realized there was such a compelling argument, so we'll switch sides. And once in a while, you'll see kind of weird evidence that something that is majority opinion began as a dissent or the other way around. But I think as they're getting to know each other better and able to predict how people are going to respond to arguments, they have less of that happening. The fewer cases they decide, the easier it is to do that. But in the 70s, where they decided 150, close to 200 cases some terms, it was kind of wild. There was sort of an unofficial rule. Footnotes in cases decided in June have less precedential value. Not actually a rule, but it was a more frantic pace, definitely 40, 50 years ago. And it's more leisurely, but these are big cases.
So going back to one that's already been decided, were you surprised by the outcome in Calais?
It didn't. I was not surprised. So Calais, it's a bunch of complicated relationships between the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, and the Voting Rights Act. Given the oral argument, it was not at all a surprise. Calais was actually argued once last year, and then they said, "Oh, why don't you re-argue this based on this question?" And the way that they framed that question, it was pretty clear that it was that they were going to answer it a certain way. Which it's kind of funny. We've had a bunch of recent cases about, the immediate effect and what maps are going to get put into effect for the fall, and the questions about how quickly someone could rewrite a map. So Alabama getting some flack for rushing ahead and rewriting the maps. Even though they told the court if the court had been ordering them to rewrite the maps, it would be very difficult to do on a shortened time frame. But, because Calais
they were able to do it.
Looking for it to come, they've been able to plan ahead. So there's a lot of back and forth about exactly how much of a crisis it is in some of these stay applications. Some of the crises seem a little manufactured, but it's hard to tell. But the court, one thing they said last week, they said, look, if you're a lower court and you're stepping in and causing the state to have to run around very quickly at the end, that's not something we're happy about. But if the state itself decides to make some moves in a state of urgency, that's for the state to decide. So the rules that apply to courts stepping in at the last, relatively the last minute, don't apply to the state itself. There's no rule that the state can't change rules close to the election. After you've already had a primary, could you just rerun? It's like, okay, we're going to have another primary. The state would have reasons not to do that, but there's no 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment Voting Rights Act, per se, that you can't do that. So, of course, Mississippi, like Alabama and a lot of the other states doing redistricting, thinking about these things, and the court has said they've got latitude to decide how much of an emergency it is.
And I think that's an important point because it was a little bit of a talking point on the left that it was a principle in the U.S. that you shouldn't disrupt voting processes too close to an election. But that's really a principle that applies to courts, not to the political bodies. Is that more or less? Am I more or less correct?
That's right. That's right. It's a separation of powers principle that courts shouldn't rush in and do things. And I think this does make a lot more sense as a judicial principle. You're supposed to be thinking about counter arguments and arguments and counter arguments as carefully as you can. You're trying to come up with every consideration you can. When you've only got 24 hours, 48 hours to do that, you're more likely to make mistakes. And if you're a legislature, well, you've got standing bodies, you've got contingency plans, you've got a lot of stuff on the shelf. You've got all the 6 months in between your sessions or whatever to come up with plans. So, everybody in Mississippi, they're, as soon as bills, fail to get out of committee, everybody's like, okay, how do we draft it again for next year? So legislatures just have a lot more wherewithal to do that. They can think about contingencies that haven't arisen yet, whereas courts are supposed to resolve actual disputes that have already arisen. And because of that, there's an inherent urgency to what they're doing, that a legislature can be more leisurely and kind of be ready to act very quickly when they need to. So it's like, having contingency plans for, wars with any country in the world. We've got a contingency plan for, what if Canada invades or something? And you can execute it more quickly if you spend more time planning. But courts can't do that because they've only got judicial power. That's power to resolve controversies between actual litigants with actual controversies.
So I'm gonna save birthright citizenship for our next segment here. But can you tell us a little bit about? I think it's Trump v. Slaughter and the removal of quasi-independent agency heads.
Yeah. So this is. I've been ever since I started teaching constitutional law. I'd be like, well, you've got this 1926 case, really scholarly, thorough case from Chief Justice Taft, and it more or less gets overruled 9 years later with almost no reasoning in this Humphreys Executor case from 1935. So basically, the court in 1935, they say, even if you do some sort of executive things, if you are quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial, Congress can insulate you from removal by the president. So it really creates, we've been going on almost 100 years now of having this headless fourth branch of government. And since 2010, the Roberts Court has been gradually inching toward overruling this case, Humphreys Executor, and saying quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial, just not a thing. It looks like they're going to do that in this Slaughter versus Trump case, or Trump versus Slaughter. So someone said, kind of getting ready for the law review articles. What's the over/under on how many bad law review notes making fun of the term slaughter? So they're going to slaughter Humphreys Executor.
No doubt. Can you stick with us for one more segment, Professor?
Oh, sure, yeah, but it's deserved to get slaughtered for a while.
You're absolutely right. Y'all stick with us. We'll have more with Professor Green coming up after this break.
From the Venable
Bold opinions. Richard dives into the stories shaping Mississippi and the nation. Now back to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
round.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings. Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. Well, still with us is Professor Christopher Green from the Ohio State University School of Law. Let's talk birthright citizenship. That's still on the docket for the court this year.
Oh yeah. So the president showed up for the first half of the case. Listened to Solicitor General defend his executive order. I think just about everybody is pretty sure the president's going to lose this. The question is how stingingly and how unanimous it's going to. It does seem like he's got the sympathies of at least a couple of justices. But what exactly the reasoning is going to be? Is it going to be possibly statutory? So just telling the president that he can't do things to change some of the immigration laws from the 1950s, or is it going to get into the constitutional question of what this phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof? So all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What exactly does that mean? The court has said things that certainly to most people have caused most law professors to say, yeah, this was answered in Wong Kim Ark. There was a dissent in Wong Kim Ark, 1898. Justice Harlan is one of the highest regarded justices. So there's an argument. Okay, maybe we should rethink this as a policy matter. It's not something that most countries have. It prevents more flexibility in our immigration laws. Prevents a guest worker type program. So there's been these arguments really off and on, for the last 125 years or so since Wong Kim Ark. But it does seem, looking into the history, like it's pretty likely to go against the president. He responded to the learning resources, the tariffs cases a few months ago, somewhat more subdued than he could have. I mean, it was spicier than normal for a president, but kind of less spicy than normal for Trump. But this one, he might really get upset, depending on. And I think some of the justices on the left end a year ago in the Casa case, they were saying like, well, why can't we have a nationwide injunction against this executive order because it's so obviously wildly wrong? Okay, so they're already locked and loaded in terms of already saying this is completely outrageous. We should allow procedural, the most aggressive procedural type things to get rid of it. That's what they wanted to do a year ago. But here, when they actually have the merits of the decision, we'll see how much they want to go at it. You do worry a little bit that the justices are looking to get quoted in the either in the newspapers first up or the case books getting put under the eyes of the next generation. Justice Scalia did that. He did a really, really, really good job of it. So when we were going to law school, of course, we're reading all this great Scalia stuff. Some of the stuff on the removal case. So the Trump versus Slaughter, we were, in part, the reason it's going to get overruled is because Justice Scalia's dissent in the Morrison case in 1988 was so compelling and so well written. So some of these justices may be thinking, well, we're going to put in some spicy language so that people aren't tempted to be like Trump in this way, kind of launching these Don Quixote level attacks on old precedent. But I don't think you're ever really going to shut that down. So it's hard to tell exactly what the motives are going to be. But it does seem like it's going to be a good historical investigation. I'm always looking forward to just seeing to what extent are they really saying these questions about the Constitution are historical questions. 14th Amendment, I usually want a lot more history than they give me, but they're going to almost certainly dig into that for the birthright citizenship. Just getting into 1866 and figuring out what these words meant in that original context. And so the more they do that, I think that's a theoretical win in terms of the rule of law, making it clear what it is we're talking about when we talk about the Constitution. And even Justice Jackson has, in some of her recent opinions, she's made clear, look, Congress has a statute, they pass it. We can't just second guess it based on policy considerations. And these kind of statements get put into 9-0 unanimous opinions. The Supreme Court is just very, very clear about certain aspects of good common sense that, frankly, 40, 50 years ago, they did not have that consensus on. So I do feel like there is progress in that kind of thing, just in the way they write the opinions. They make clear that there is a straightforward textual standard. We're trying to figure out what meaning is expressed by terms in their original context. And the more they coalesce on that consensus, the better.
The birthright citizenship question to me is kind of a perfect example for traditional conservatives of an issue where the policy there might be a good argument for changing the policy, but the Constitution doesn't affect that policy change for us. I mean, if you truly believe in originalism and some level of judicial restraint, this is a moment where you might lose on the substance of the case, even though there's a decent policy argument on the other side of it.
Oh, yeah. Chief Justice Roberts. So when the SG was saying, well, this is not the same world we live in. Transportation technology. When you can fly into a country, have a baby, fly back out the next day, this is not the same world that we're living in 1866. And he said immediately, well, but it is the same Constitution. And, that's catnip for people like me.
Right.
But it is a cost of having a system where you set down rules and you say it's this Constitution you're taking an oath to support. It's not going to change unless it's lawfully changed. If you have an abstract category that applies to different facts, it can change. But unless you have an abstract category like that, it's going to speak with the same meaning today that it spoke with in its original context.
I think of it almost as being the inverse of the Second Amendment argument on the left, where they come in and say, well, the guns today are so different than they were in 1789. But to the Chief Justice's point, the Second Amendment is still the same as it was in 1789.
Exactly. So if you want to change it, you've got to work to get a constitutional amendment. There are statutory things you can do as well. I'm always hoping that the limits that you sometimes see on executive power are going to encourage our legislatures, especially Congress, to get up and do some things. Really, state legislatures are much more active than Congress, and to the extent that just legislative vigor is evident at the state level, you hope that some of those people are going to come to Congress and say, "Hey, let's do things," even though it's our guy doing the executive stuff. We really want to get this in the U.S. Code rather than just be, there's the old SNL how a bill becomes a law parody. I'm an executive order, and I pretty much just happen. Right, so you want things to get approved and actually be binding on the next executive to take over the White House, and you want there to be the give and take among the legislative process that you need, so that you get a stable outcome. This is a republic. We're supposed to be working for the interests of everybody, and going through the legislature almost always going to be better. Unless you've got secrecy or dispatch, unless it has to happen fast or there's reasons for confidentiality, it should be a law. It should be an actual statute. Congress, they may do some things. It's so close, and the elections are so looming over everybody. It is a tough environment, but they managed to appropriate money for the Army every 2 years. They got to do that, and they can do all these other things too while they're at it.
We've only got about a minute left, Professor, but I'm curious, this is less about substantive law, but with AI, are you seeing that change how students are in a classroom? And for law students, what do you think the effect it's going to have on current law students, the ability to just hop on an AI and generate what an associate might have taken a week to do in a relatively short period of time?
I think the thing, generally speaking, it's requiring people to have more plasticity of mind. You have got to learn how to do different things. You're going to need to learn how to push the robots around. I think, 30, 40 years from now, it might be the AI basically does the law and the humans do the equity. So the exceptions when we think, well, this isn't really the best things all considered. When the robots are able to kind of just find all the precedents, figure out, massage them, figure out all the best arguments and counter arguments, which precedents are on each side, Then you're going to need the humans to do the human judgment. I think psychologizing, stuff like family law, no way you can have AI handle a divorce settlement or child custody, that kind of thing. A lot of the criminal law, you're going to absolutely need human beings. And then just the difficult questions at the borders. You don't want to hand over the AI to that. You look at the AI on the battlefield, of actual battlefields, you don't want to hand it over, and not on the metaphorical battlefields that the lawyers deal with.
Hey, we've had Professor Green, professor at the Ohio State University, and a Barksdale alum. So great to have you on, Professor. Thank you.
Great to see you, Lucian. Take care.
From the Seabrook.com.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
On with the show.
Is back. Holy smokes. On Super Talk, Mississippi.
It wasn't very large. There was just enough room to cram the drums in the corner over by the Dodge. It was a 54 with a mashed up door and a cheesy little lamp, with a sign on the front said Fender Champ and a second-hand guitar. It was a Stratocaster with a whammy bar.
Good morning, y'all. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings with Richard Cross. Remember, Mornings with Richard Cross is presented by Community Bank, rooted in our community, communitybank.net. As always, Lance, great music there.
Yeah, Joe's Garage by Frank Zappa. Good stuff, man.
A lot of feedback on the C Spire text line on the discussion about birthright citizenship. And if you want to be part of the conversation, send us a text at 601-879-4395. And that really is an interesting case. And we've talked a little bit about this with Professor Green before, because it's one where there are good policy arguments against birthright citizenship, but you have the two problems of the 14th Amendment seeming to suggest that anybody born in the U.S. is automatically a U.S. citizen, and two, this issue of the actual immigration code seeming to contemplate the same thing. So, this may be one where the Constitution and the policy just don't happen to line up, and you've got to make a change if you want to see something happen. But I know there are a lot of people who have real problems with that as a policy on the policy side here on the C Spire text line, and I don't know that they're wrong, but it's going to be interesting to see whether the court ends up addressing the constitutional issue or decides it on a statutory basis. Or somehow otherwise avoids the question altogether. But we'll know here in the next couple of weeks.
Is this a privilege / luxury, or is this a right? I guess is one of the ways I look at it. And two, if the privilege or luxury or the right is being abused, then you kind of have to get back to the drawing board. I agree. I'm not sure the answer, but
I don't think there's anything offensive about suggesting. I mean, there are plenty of people who do. I'm sure we'll get some feedback on that. There's nothing offensive about suggesting that you shouldn't automatically be a citizen of a country just because you happen to be born there. That's not the way it works in most countries.
Well, I think intent as well, right? I mean, if the intent is to steal a citizenship by just showing up and popping out a baby and going, all right, that's a citizen. Or if you're actually here working and contributing and paying taxes, and again, I think that when the law was written, is probably the tricks of the trade probably weren't as prevalent.
Totally different. Absolutely. I mean, and you didn't have. I mean, but the way this gets framed up by people on the political left is though it's somehow offensive or racist for you to suggest that you don't support birthright citizenship, but that's not the way it works in most of the world. I mean, if you go to France or the UK or Spain, China, I mean, pick a place, and your pregnant wife happens to give birth there, your child in most of those places isn't a citizen of that country automatically. In some places, they can't become a citizen of those countries because you are not a citizen of that country. So the idea that saying maybe in the 21st century we ought to rethink the 19th century, the 18th century version of the way this was all constructed is a little different. And the question does turn, and people in the C Spire text line are pointing this out, the question turns on this constitutional language of subject to the laws thereof, because it says born in the U.S. and subject to the laws thereof. And there is a question about what exactly that meant. And people who want to see birthright citizenship removed by this executive order say that meant something different. But there are strong historical arguments that was just designed to exclude people here who were diplomats or here as part of an invading army. So there's a very real question about what that means, and I think the court is going to do a real deep dive, like the professor said, on what it means. But it may be one of these moments where the policy should be X, but the Constitution forces something different. But we'll see here in the next couple of weeks.
Ooh, it's a complicated endeavor. Yeah, it's walking a tightrope. I mean, as you stated, you're always going to have the critics, those saying, "Oh, this is racist," and the reality is, I mean, it's not racist as much as it is culturist. I mean, if the culture doesn't jive up and you're letting people come here and steal citizenship, I mean, again, I just don't see that as the way our founding fathers looked at this law. And, you had to take a boat. It was pretty hard to get to America. Now you can just hop on an airplane and be here in a minute.
Yeah. No, things
across the border.
Things have changed. Yeah. Things have changed. The country's changed. The technology's changed. I mean, it's a different world, and I don't think there's anything wrong with people saying maybe that's something that we ought to take a look at. And that doesn't mean we don't want people to come to this country. We want people to come bring their treasure and their talent to the U.S. and put it to work here. And integrate into this extraordinary society that we've built. But citizenship's a big deal. I mean, it's not it's not a membership in some club. I mean, you're an owner of the United States of America and entitled to all the rights that come with that. That's an absolutely massive thing, and I don't think there's anything wrong with us saying we want to be a little judicious about what it actually requires to become a citizen. And if you're listening to this and thinking, gosh, I hate that I just tuned in at 8:43. I wish I'd been listening all morning. Well, you can get just about every SuperTalk Mississippi show on your favorite podcasting app. Mornings with Richard Cross, middays with Gerard Gibbert, Good Things, Sports Talk Mississippi, along with favorites like Thunder and Lightning, The Rebel Report with Michael Borky, The Eagle Hour, and many more SuperTalk Mississippi podcasts are available. Just search for SuperTalk anywhere you listen to podcasts. So
there you go.
I saw, although now it's behind a paywall, the Rolling Stone story on Morrissey. He's got some impersonators out there.
That was something I had shared with you earlier, and we visited for a minute. And I'm a fan of the Smiths. I've always kind of kept up with them, and they split up. Morrissey's had some media problems over the years, and people have been very critical. The band itself has kind of fought themselves for a while. And, he has, I think, 7 different impersonators online that are, in his words, trying to destroy his career. One actually is a friend or an attachment to one of the ex-band members. So that was something I threw out there to you earlier. It's like, with AI and all of this really at your fingertips, we haven't really seen a lot of this yet where real people are being impersonated by whoever and whatever in an attempt to discredit or ruin them. And I guess as a lawyer, my question to you is, he has 2 law firms working on this. It seems a very obscure, location in the world right now as far as the online presence and all of those that are out there trying to sell you something, maybe use your identity, steal your identity. I mean, do you think that clarity, do you think there will be some more safeguards, regulatory things that will come in to prohibit
That's a really good question.
These types of, because I see this becoming a bigger issue, potentially.
Absolutely.
Being attacked because those out there just don't like what you have to say.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good question. I mean, that used to be one of the features on Twitter, the sort of blue checkmark crowd,
right.
Although they were, I think one of the criticisms is they were giving those blue checkmarks out to people who tended to agree with the orthodox sort of center-left or far-left views of the people who ran the company at the time. I don't know. I think it's an interesting area of the law. It's not one I know a lot about, but it's going to be an ongoing. It's going to be an ongoing problem, especially. And we were talking about it. We've talked about it before, especially with deep fakes, right? Where you can generate a really convincing video of somebody saying or doing really offensive stuff as a way of ruining them. And so I do think you'll see that continue to develop.
It's kind of like the birthright citizenship thing. You're going to have bad actors.
Right.
99% are going to be just fine. And, of course, you want those folks. But and when you have these that take advantage of a situation, find that loophole, find the weak spot, and use that and manipulate that to their benefit or whatever it is that they're after, I see that as the area where we have the most worry, at least me, and say an industry like we work in.
Yeah.
Where, you really want the information you're getting to be true. You don't want to have to go through 3 AI platforms to determine if this is real or if this is fake. So that being my next thing, do you think there should be any safeguards out there? I know it's been proposed to make sure that what you're seeing, if it is AI generated, will be disclosed as such, or if it's coming from a human. I just don't know.
I think I tend to think there would be value, but it's not something I've thought a lot about in requiring you to tell if something is AI generated. Because you think about this business. Anytime something's bad on social media, and you see it all the time, somebody will post some piece of misinformation that's terribly, terrible about somebody. It gets repeated a million times. If there's some sort of correction, it gets repeated 1,000 times. And so all it would take, somebody creates some video, put it out of somebody in public life doing something terrible, saying something terrible, and all of a sudden people say, well, I'm going to listen to somebody else in the morning. I'm going to watch somebody else in the evening. And, so it's a good question you ask, Lance, and it is not a problem that I would expect to go away anytime soon. Y'all, this is Lucian Smith here with Lance on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Stick with us for final thoughts coming up next.
From the Venable Glass
with Richard Cross, SuperTalk Mississippi.
Morning, everybody. This is Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're talking about how AI is going to be used to damage people. I think the other piece of that is also true, sort of the reverse of that, Lance. I think you're also going to have people, anytime there's something embarrassing that they've said or done, they're going to say, oh, that was AI generated.
Yeah, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at what point is there a kind of baseline of
Yeah.
where you say, okay, what's real, what's fake? Because I see exactly the same thing. Where
you remember
say,
the
no,
David Hasselhoff video from like 15 or 20 years ago where one of his kids took a video of him like eating a cheeseburger while he was clearly badly under the influence, and it somehow got published. I feel like that's the sort of thing nowadays, if it came out, you'd go, oh, that couldn't possibly have been me.
Yeah,
that
it wasn't me.
That was generated by artificial intelligence. That's false.
Well, you saw that Trump is extending his stay for a few hours in beautiful La France. He got invited to dinner.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Emmanuel Macron. He said
he's a very nice guy. I like Emmanuel, very nice guy. We're going to Versailles. Versailles is not gold leaf; it's real gold leaf, and I won't miss any time in the Oval Office. I'll be back in Bay. But yeah, so he's having dinner with Macron and crew at the Oval, I guess, in whatever dining hall they have at Versailles.
Oh,
so
interesting.
Big time deal. He goes, I'll be back a little later, basically early morning, and I don't sleep a whole lot, so I'll be in the Oval Office first thing. So.
Well, it's not like he's got to catch a commercial flight back. So.
Yeah, he's not checking baggage. There's, my thought was, you got to think there's got to be a really nice bed on Air Force One.
Oh, I'm sure.
If not, he had to have one installed because that cat's on that thing all the time, man.
You pointed this out yesterday. Amazing. Going from the UFC fight, hopping on at 1 o'clock in the morning, flying over to Europe, day and change of meetings, and now flying back after dinner tonight. But no, I I'd not seen he was having dinner with the president of France.
Apparently, he's been signing some autographs over there too. People are fired up, enjoying seeing him. It's so funny how, the perception of him here may be a little different than what we see the reception he gets abroad.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And it seems there's a great deal of respect for the man. And I would not say that we've seen any type of event he's been to where he's been shunned or hasn't had seemingly a great time and meeting with people and getting things done. It really blows my mind. I'll be the one to say I try to stay in the middle on a lot of things just so that we can see and communicate both sides. But I've been very impressed with the way that he's been able to juggle so many extremely important things, and still maintain some level of sanity and the ability to get things done.
So I've taken to listening. You can listen to radio from all over the world on the internet. I mean, you have been able to for a long time. I'm not breaking news here.
You're not on a ham radio at the house.
Exactly. Ever since Al Gore invented the internet, you could do this
on his way to walking to farm.
That's right.
Everything.
But it's interesting listening to foreign coverage of the U.S. or discussions about U.S. politics. I mean, they're frequently critical of U.S. policy. They're frequently critical of something President Trump is doing. They also have been critical of other things other presidents have done. But it just shows you how much of an entertainment industry dumping on Trump is.
Sure.
There are people who they have figured out. There are folks who want to sit in front of the TV and hear about how evil Donald Trump is, and they will sit there and have eyeballs there for advertisers, and so they're going to dump on him nonstop, tell you how he's a tyrant. That was the word Robert De Niro used. He can't love America when we've got a tyrant in the White House. I mean,
sure, and he's an American.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's just insane.
Again, the nature of Americans being apologetic about something, about our history or what. Look, history is rife with conflict and rife with solutions. It's not a pretty thing. I don't care what part of the world you go to and what time period you go to. History is not very rosy. Well, it takes a lot to carve a country out of what we were dealing with. And the Native Americans, if you study Native American history, it wasn't just like Americans said, all right, we're going to kill all of you. It's not how it worked. So, I mean, the rewriting of our history so that you can be contradictory or you can be, look down on us. It's easy for Americans to do that. But if you really go back and just read your history, it's not as bad, I would say. Both sides, every side has their argument.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't to love your country does not mean you have to think that there was never a mistake or that there were ever things that happened that weren't good. Absolutely, there's lots in our history that is deeply problematic, but that doesn't mean we're not still the greatest country in the history of the world, and all of us should thank our lucky stars every day that we have the good fortune to be citizens of this country.
And I know we're about to go, but I think Douglas Carswell did a great job explaining the productivity of Mississippi. Greater than the UK, greater than Germany, GDP per capita. Think about that for a minute. How hard do you work here if you're putting out more than the United Kingdom and Germany?
Absolutely. That's a great website, and I'm not going to give it to you again, but I'm sure Douglas will tweet it out so that we make sure you got the right one. I would mention it again, but I'm sure I would mess up the URL, and I want to make sure you get there. Y'all, thank you for spending 3 hours with us today. Great way to start the day. This has been Lucian Smith here on Mornings on SuperTalk Mississippi. Coming up next is Fox News, followed by SuperTalk Mississippi News.
But now I smell the rain, and with it pain, and it's heading my way. Sometimes I grow so
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.